Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Racing Recap, episode 10 of the Wargiven Racing podcast. This will be a all-encompassing recap of motorsports that occurred over the weekends. This weekend it happened to be three races at the Daytona International Speedway to kick off the start of all three of NASCAR's primary national divisions. So, first off, we will start with the crown jewel, the main event, the Daytona 500, which was yesterday, and it, for the first time in a few years, started on time, ran on time, finished on time. Within 4 hours, there was no rain delays. The weather was beautiful. It looked perfect on TV. And yeah, so we'll get into it. Just looking at the top 10, you had winner Austin Cindric, the rookie, in his 8th career cup start for Team Penske in the traditional Blue Deuce, now the Discount Tire number 2, which is a Ford. So Ford gets another Daytona 500 victory. Penske gets its third, I believe. The number 2 car gets its first, and Austin Cindric wins his first in the start of his first full NASCAR Cup season. So rounding out the top 10, you have Bubba Wallace in his 2311 Racing Toyota, Chase Briscoe in his Stewart Haas Ford, Cindric's teammate Ryan Blaney, who almost was able to win, except Cindric decided to block him into the wall on the final straightaway. Eric Almirola, a solid day after starting back in the pack for Stewart Haas. Kyle Busch getting his damaged Joe Gibbs Toyota up into the top 10, a very strong run for him. Michael McDowell being Mr. Consistency on those super speedways, getting into the top 10 again. David Reagan for Rick Ware, a car that last year would have finished this race multiple laps down, finished in the top 10. Brad Keselowski, the villain of this year's Daytona 500, finishes 9th. And then the lone Chevy in the top 10, and an ultimate quiet day for Hendrick and Chevy in general, Chase Elliott. So notables with the top 10s, Bubba Wallace, his third second place finish at the Daytona International Super Speedway. So his last 3 super speedway results have been a second place at Daytona in the fall last year. He won the rain shortened Talladega fall race, and then he's second in the Daytona 500. Bubba Wallace may have his faults in other tracks, road courses, intermediates, but there can't be any denial on how good of a super speedway driver this man is, and he deserves all the credit. Obviously, his car is good, but he did it in a Richard Petty car a few years ago, where he finished second in his first ever race on a super speedway in the Cup Series. Bubba Wallace will win a Daytona 500 within the next 5 years. He will win multiple super speedway races in the next 5 years. I don't think he can challenge across the full season yet, but I think we finally will start to see Bubba Wallace break out, and I'm excited for that. I'm happy for that. It's going to be nice to see Bubba get the credit he deserves for everything that he's had to work through to get to this point. Chase Briscoe with his best ever result in the Cup Series so far. Strong day. Kind of just didn't have the position in the run to win the 500. Blaney, well, listening to him on Twitter last night, he wanted to make sure a Penske car won the 500, and he wasn't going to make a move until he was sure that would happen. He didn't. It ultimately cost him as his teammate blocked him coming out of turn 4, but still 4th place in the 500. A good start to the season. Almirola, like I said, Busch, McDowell, Reagan, all consistent, stayed in the front, stayed clean. Busch got the damaged car there. Very good nights for them. And now we come to Brad Keselowski, Wrecking Ball Keselowski. He was involved in most of the wrecks in one way, shape, or form. Ended up getting spun out at the very end. We'll talk more about that in a second. But yes, the most divisive person who I picked to win the 500, and I was close with. But if he had won, I would have felt a little bad because of some of the stuff the stuff that went on. Chase Elliott, quiet day. I'm pretty sure the only time I saw Chase Elliott do anything, that's harsh, but it was probably him doing donuts, trying to avoid the Kyle Larson, Kevin Harvick, Noah Gragson, Eric Jones wreck. And he dives straight through the grass, and you can see him then spin out. He nearly runs into the IMSA safer barrier. But that was probably all I saw from Elliott all day. Really quiet 500, which is, kind of a shame because, as you can see here, Chevy was unable to do anything at the end. So, notable incidents. Lap 42, we had Cindric brake check Briscoe, which caused a spin. But before that, Kaz Grala's wheel took a vacation. Legitimately, the wheel completely fell off. Probably crew error, as the money team's crew was reported to be a truck and Xfinity crew primarily, who still use the 5 lug nuts compared to the single lug nut this year for the Cup Series. So that's probably just small crew error. And then no one talks about Biffle because on lap 22, Greg Biffle goes to the garage and Fox didn't say a single thing about Greg Biffle. I'm pretty sure the entire race. So Biffle was chilling for 70-some laps with a fuel pump issue, and no one talked about him. He wasn't talked about. No one mentioned him, and kind of sucks. So after that, lap 53, we've got another wheel vacation, except this time it's Justin Haley in the 31 Khaled car. This was different because the entire rim of the wheel shattered. So Fox got a good look of the wheel once it stopped. Of course, Fox missed these 2 cautions because they were on commercial, full screen commercial, and didn't cut back. But Haley's wheel, when it stopped in the backstretch infield past the Le Mans chicane, was completely rubber. It was just the rubber wheel. There was nothing inside of it, and that was interesting to say the least. Some new next-gen parts may need to be looked at, especially those rims we can't have. Wheel rims disintegrating and wheels taking vacations. So then we come to the first small big one, which was the scariest of the small big ones, as Denny Hamlin, a favorite, Harrison Burton, who was performing extremely strongly in his first 500, Ross Chastain, an innocent bystander, and then William Byron, another strong performer, all DNF because of Brad Keselowski getting into the back of a squirrely Harrison Burton, which turned Burton, flipped him. Yeah, it just wasn't good. Denny Hamlin had toe problems, like car link toe problems that caused him to retire. Chastain just had damage. Byron slapped the inside wall pretty hard. Glad he was okay. Obviously, Burton doing his best impression of a backflip that went horribly wrong was okay, but his car was junked. And the 21 had been loose for several laps coming out of the corners, and Keselowski gave him a big bump coming out of 2, and it just turned him. So 50-50 on the Keselowski Burton. Not Burton's fault, not really Keselowski's fault, but the bump. This ended stage 1. Martin Truex survived through the chaos and won the stage. And then stage 2, legitimately nothing super caution-y happened. As you can see here, there was no cautions in stage 2. However, Chase Elliott stalled on pit road. There was pit road drama. Daniel Suarez had some issue. There was lots of small issues that caused the field to spread out and then link up and train a bit, but that was normal, and it was still exciting. They would go 2 wide every now and then, but it was very clean. It was very clean. Then we come to the small big one, number 2, on lap 152. Tyler Reddick, I believe it was reported later that he had some sort of tire connection problem. I think it was a toe link is what it was reported that broke, which got him loose coming out of 4. And Jacques Villeneuve, who was, I believe, 2 laps down at the time, was right behind him, gave him a bump like he'd been giving, learning how to super speedway race. And it turned Reddick, destroyed his car. Not that his car was going to continue much longer because of issues. Just rough. just rough for Reddick. And then in the result, which much to my enjoyment, because I do not like Joey Logano. I respect his talent. I don't like him for some of the shenanigans he pulls. I think he's a good broadcaster, a good commentator, a good race car driver, probably a good person. I don't like how he races typically, so I was happy to see him get stuck. He went a few laps down, I believe, there, and wasn't really competitive for the rest of the night. And then the small, big one, number 3, the one that most directly impacts me, Kyle Larson got into the back of a loose Kevin Harvick, who then got into, I believe it was Eric Jones in front of him. Or no, it was Buescher. Buescher escaped this. And it wrecked Larson, Jones, Harvick, Gragson, Gilliland. And they all wrecked out. I forgot to put one in between these two cautions, and this was probably the biggest Brad Keselowski moment. Coming out of 4, he got into Stenhouse, spun Stenhouse, took out Buescher, which is Brad's teammate, and ended the strong run for Ricky Stenhouse that he had been putting up to that point. Also, it damaged Bubba Wallace's car, which probably impacted the finish, and so moving on to the finish, it was a Penske front row, and they got away clean. They hooked up. The outside lane tried with Brad Keselowski and Chase Briscoe coming out of 3 and 4, but they didn't have a run. Blaney made his move. Cindric blocked. Bubba tried sneaking through on the bottom with Eric Almirola behind, but Almirola didn't give Bubba a push. And so Cindric won by a front clip over Bubba Wallace, with Brad Keselowski probably getting what he deserved and getting spun in the contact between Briscoe and Keselowski, which caused McDowell to wreck and caused several drivers to have David Reagan, who had escaped multiple crashes up to that point. And Austin Cindric wins his Daytona 500, his first 500. So just looking at some statistics, 7 cautions for 37 laps, about 18.5% of today's race. Only 1 was for stage break. And this was the only race to finish under green. It went into overtime, but it was the only race to finish under green. There were 13 different leaders with 35 lead changes. Truex swept the stages, so he had a good points day despite getting caught up in the Stenhouse Keselowski Buescher incident. 15 cars finished on the lead lap, which I believe is the lowest of the 3 races. There were 12 DNFs, which is relatively low, although several cars involved in the final lap wreck probably would have DNF'd. It's the first Daytona victory, or Daytona 500 victory, for the number 2 for Roger Penske, which was on his birthday yesterday. So happy birthday to the captain, and I'm sure that was a great birthday present. And then Cindric wins back-to-back first Daytona races. So he won last year's Xfinity season opener at Daytona and then repeated this year with the 500. So how, I guess, most people didn't see him, including myself, as at least a strong underdog for today's race is surprising. But I definitely think he can push on with this, with his road course strength. I don't think he'll get him to a round of 8. It might, because of the Charlotte Roval being in that round of 12 and Talladega, but I don't think he's consistent enough across the season to earn enough playoff points to get him to that point without having to rely on a win. But I still think he's going to have a strong season, top 10 in points. And obviously this is a great start. Over-aggressive Keselowski or getting used to a new car. So Keselowski in the past has been subject to multiple shenanigans by his teammates, by others around him that wreck him out of the race. Keselowski probably should have won last year's 500. He gets wrecked out. Keselowski has a historically poor record at the Daytona International Speedway in both races. His only win is in the fall race at Daytona, I believe, while he's won like 6 or 7 at Talladega. So I'm sure he was frustrated. I'm sure he saw it was his opportunity, and he wasn't going to waste it like last year. So, yes, the bumps were probably a bit more aggressive than they should have been, but then again, it's a new car. It drafts differently. So I think it's 50-50 on that. So that wraps up my Cup recap. We're going to move on to the beef. It's What's for Dinner 300. Always love the Xfinity series in their names. They come up with some fantastic sponsorships. So their top 10, Austin Hill wins in his first Xfinity start for Richard Childress Racing. Stalwart Chevy team with Chevys rounding out the top 3 with Allmendinger representing Colleague, Gregson representing Junior Motorsports, and then finally the first Ford, which is Riley Herbst for Stuart Haas. Then JRM, Richard Childress 5th and 6th. Anthony Alfredo, a strong day, went a lap down or 2 laps down early in the race due to a black flag because he lost a window panel. I believe it was on his driver's side rear window, so NASCAR black flagged him to get that replaced. But a strong start to the season for him with his new team, Our Motorsports. Ryan Sieg and his family team, a good day, top 10. Josh Bilicki in currently his only announced race for DGM, getting a top 10. And then Brandon Brown, the driver of much controversy after his Talladega win last year, a top 10. So obviously good starts for that small team as well. Nice to see him being successful again at super speedways and getting that car to the finish. So notable incidents. I was unable to watch this race as closely, which is why this has less on it. Lap 15 though was the small one with Jeremy Clements and Drew Dollar. Dollar had been starting his first Xfinity race after running the ARCA race earlier in the day, and he kind of got loose and got turned right into the path of Jeremy Clements, who made the playoffs last year with his small family team, and ruined his day. And so Clements took to Twitter calling out Drew Dollar, which was partially fair, partially not. It was only lap 15, not even a quarter of the way into the race. So on stage 30, Daniel Hemrick, with his first race with Cowlick Racing, wins the stage. Stage 2, much like the NASCAR race, not much. Hemrick wins again. And then we get to the big one. And this was the big one. This was the big one of the weekend. 10 cars, mostly in the middle of the pack, wreck out. Several BJ McLeod cars, some DGM cars, some Cowlick cars. I believe Landon Castle was involved, and Daniel Hemrick was involved in it. I think Hemrick had been shuffled back a little bit due to pit stops or something along those lines, and he got taken out here. So quite unfortunate for Hemrick, as he was really strong all day. Sam Mayer, I believe, was involved. It was your fairly typical Daytona big one. And then we get to the scary one, which I had literally just turned the TV on to watch the end of the race. And coming down the backstretch on the last lap, Myatt Snyder and the 31 of Jordan Anderson got loose, got turned, got backwards, got airborne, and got tabletopped by a pole in the crash fence, in the catch fence. And it destroyed the entirety of his car, minus where he was sitting. So he walked away, but oh my Lord, it was scary. And obviously this raises concerns about safety in NASCAR. It ripped holes in the catch fence. The engine was ripped out. The fuel intake was ripped out. And the fact he walked out of his car by himself was massively impressive for him and lucky. And it's an unfortunate side effect of how NASCAR races are at these tracks. You know, there's always going to be that argument. Is it too risky? Is it not safe enough? Do we need to slow the cars down? And at the end of the day, this was an extremely, extremely unfortunate accident that NASCAR needs to look at about why an Xfinity car went airborne backwards like it did, how it got so high and how it flipped. I mean, NASCARs historically flip sideways. They roll. I haven't seen a car go straight up and vertical. I mean, when he hit that catch fence, he was nearly 90 degrees vertical. And I don't know how no one hit him. I mean, cars went under him. That's how high up he got. But nonetheless, NASCAR hopefully looks at it, learns, adds some extra aero flaps to keep the cars down. And he walked away, which is the important part, that he was safe. And it overshadowed Austin Hill winning. Austin Hill made the move coming onto the final lap to stay out in front And he got what he deserved. He won the race. He won the race. It didn't have to go into overtime, thank God. And he performed well. So, looking at some more statistics, we had 6 cautions for 28 laps, which was just over 23% of the race. We had 2 stage cautions and the caution on the finish. We had 9 leaders with 18 lead changes, which is surprisingly low. Daniel Hemrick sweeps the stages. 21 cars finished on the lead lap, which is the most of the 3 series. 12 DNFs. Obviously, that's not including some of the cars wrecked on the last lap. Same amount as the Cup Series. Austin Hill wins his first Xfinity race and his first start for RCR. Like I mentioned last night, Hill had ran a few races for Hattori Racing Enterprises, which was his truck team, but they are mid-pack at best in the Xfinity Series. So this was really his first opportunity. He took it. He won, locked in the playoffs. Another big story. Kaulig is dethroned. They didn't win at Talladega last year, but then again, that was more of a fluke win last fall with Brandon Brown winning because of weather and darkness, supposed darkness. I'm not going to get into that. But the July race, or the August Xfinity Daytona race, Kaulig did a 3-wide across the finish line, and only the fact that Justin Allgaier was pushing the winner got him third place. But if you've ever seen Ford versus Ferrari or any pictures of the 1967 24 Hours of Daytona finish where they go 3-wide on the banks, it looked like that. Kaulig was 1, 2, 3 in a wedge formation coming across the line. And they won the Spring Talladega race, which then again was also rain shortened. And they were I think 3 cars in the top 5 in the Daytona race that Cindric won. So they finally were dethroned in the sense that they only had 1 car in the top 5. And obviously that's not Landon Castle's fault or Hemrick's fault. They got involved in wrecks. So, but they're dethroned. That's 2 straight in a row they haven't won, and they were not as fortunate or strong or linked up as they normally are at these tracks. And they've got 2 new drivers in the team, so they're still working how to figure everything out. Where were the Toyotas? Well, Toyota, much like Ford in the Truck Series and Toyota in the Cup Series, don't have many cars. Joe Gibbs went from 4 cars to 3. Sam Hunt had 2 cars here this week, and that might have been it. Jeremy Clements is a Chevy. I think that was it. And, again, Toyota's going to hurt themselves. Obviously they've got Joe Gibbs and whatnot, but until they get more cars, they aren't going to win these super speedway races in the Xfinity Series unless one of their drivers gets out front. So their highest finish today was Ty Gibbs in 11th. So kind of disappointing from them. All right. Moving on to the third and final race, the Next Era Energy 250, the truck race. This had its own full stream, so I won't go in as depth as I did with the Xfinity. But top 10, winner Zane Smith. Front Row Motorsports gets another truck victory in their 38. Ben Rhodes, Christian X, Tanner Gray, Parker Kligerman round out the top 5. A strong debut for X in his first full-time season with Thor Sport. Ben Rhodes, the defending champ, another great day at the office, was unable to repeat, though. Jesse Little, strong from him in his part-time campaign from Young Motorsports. Same with Parker Kligerman at Henderson. Danny Bowen, I don't know really how to say his last name, but I'm just going to say Bone. A good day for him in his only confirmed start at the moment. Ty Majeski in his return to full-time, a good day. Carson Hocevar, a good day. And then Matt DiBenedetto, a good day in his first truck start ever. As you can see here, Ford with 2 trucks representative that they only have, I believe, 4 trucks in the entire race. Toyota had some heavy hitters knocked out. Chevy, their heavy hitters were non-existent. GMS got knocked out, both trucks, and the next big truck team, Nice, has a lot of rookies, and they struggled today or struggled this weekend with mechanical issues and stuff like that. Notable incidents, stage 1 and 2, pretty straightforward, pretty clean, very aggressive at points. The trucks are also debuting a new chassis. However, unlike the next gen in the Cup Series, teams are still allowed to use the previous generation of chassis. So that led to some interesting drafting between those older style trucks and the new ones. It took John Hunter Nemechek swept the stages, led the most laps, started from second. He had a good day up until the big one. Jack Wood had mechanical failure. Something broke coming out of turn 2, hit the wall hard, but he was okay. Corey Heim just had a bad day. And it was really not really his fault. He collided with Dean Thompson on pit road, or Thompson hit him or something like that. And that damaged his right front fender, which then caused his tire to go down and completely wreck the rest of his car. And then we had the small one, which had Tate Fogelman in the back of the pack have some issue with some. This was a weird day, I think, for a lot of weekend for a lot of the teams as they're getting used to those new cars or trucks, and it caused a small spin out, no big damage. And then we had the big one coming to the white flag, and by coming to the white flag, I literally mean the white flag was waving. They had not crossed the line, so we re-racked and went to overtime. More thoughts on that later. Multiple front runners were knocked out. Nemechek gave Tyler Ankrum a big push when Ankrum wasn't expecting it, causing him to spin out and turn and wrecking out Nemechek, Ankrum, Kraus, Enfinger, Crafton, and Colby Howard. So, again, and this is the crazy thing, the driver that won both stages, and it happened in all 3 races where the same guy won the first 2 stages, they were involved in a wreck that either practically eliminated or eliminated them from the race. And I mean, that's super speedway racing, but that's kind of ironic and kind of funny in my opinion. The controversy. NASCAR's policy is when the yellow goes out, the yellow light on the dashes, the screens around the track that are in the Kench fencing, are the official timing. So it's not the flagman's job, even though traditionally in the past when broadcasters say, and they come to the white flag, they take the white flag, they see the white flag, and they use these colloquial terms that are quite obvious to help the viewer. I always thought that was, once you see the white flag and it's waving up there, that's it. Because that's what I've heard on TV. But that's not it. It's when they cross the start-finish to start the last lap. I think that's but I'll get onto that later if I ever do a NASCAR video, what I think they need to change or improve on. But, again, no one was hurt. They were factually correct. There were pictures taken and posted on Twitter that showed the yellow lights were out before the leaders crossed the line. So they didn't get that call wrong from that aspect. Just from the public viewing perspective, I think they had their crash. They had their photo finish. They should have just called it, in my opinion, but nonetheless. We wait half an hour, the red flag, and then we get to the finish, which was the most unsatisfying finish of the weekend. Well, actually, no, the Xfinity finish was horrible, so never mind. But this wasn't satisfying. We waited half an hour, they rack them up, and 3 trucks in the back decide to spin because some oil was on the track, which NASCAR, 1, should have cleaned up, 2, should have made sure the truck that was leaking it wasn't racing still, and 3, they threw the caution because these trucks were stuck right after the start-finish line. And there's no way for these trucks, when they get back all the way around, to stop before they hit it. So I agreed with them throwing the caution. Zane Smith, the deserved winner. Fortunately, they didn't cost him that victory. Looking at some more statistics, caution 7 for 27 with 25.5%. Again, 2-stage cautions and the finish. There was a red flag. There's a red flag in the Cup race as well. There were 10 leaders, so the middle in terms of the lead, but tied for the lowest lead changes. John Hunter swept the stages. 19 cars on the lead lap with the highest DNFs of 13. Zane Smith wins in his first start for front row after switching from GMS racing. ThorSport is strong once again. The only truck they had that wasn't really up at the end was Crafton, and that's because Crafton got taken out. Although, to his crew's credit, and again, another picture posted on Twitter, they were attempting to fix his car, which had no front end. The engine and its casing was literally exposed. So, fortunately, NASCAR black flagged him, didn't allow him to go out, and so he was done. And then this brings me to the final question and final little discussion point for today. Why does Ford not have more trucks in the Truck Series? And much like the previous one on the Xfinity, why doesn't Toyota have more in the Xfinity Series? Toyota in the Cup Series, it's well known that them and Joe Gibbs, they're tight-knit, and if you try to build up another team, it's very expensive. I mean, it led to Furniture Row Racing going bankrupt, more or less. It led to Levine Family Racing going bankrupt. Also, the pandemic helped cause that, but there's signs, like connections between the two. And then in the Xfinity, much like the Xfinity Series, where Ford doesn't have much Xfinity cars either. I mean, with Penske pulling out from full time, they've got SS Greenlight, which is mid to backpack. You've got RSS, which can run in the top 10 with one car consistently. They had 3 cars in today's race, but they're only running 2 full time, so we'll see where that second car falls. And then you have Stuart Haas with 1 car. So, with Ford and Toyota, well, Toyota's fine in the Truck Series. And that's why it's more confusing why they don't have more Xfinity teams, because they have so much in the Truck Series. They have KBM, they have ThorSport, they have HRE, which is Hattori Racing Enterprises. They have Stuart Friesen's team, Halmer Friesen. They've got On Point. They've got Hill Motorsports this year. Like, they have a lot of teams, a lot of trucks, and they run well, really well. But it's surprising. And then with Ford, it's the same thing in the Truck Series. You have Front Row Motorsports and you have DGR, and I know that's being awfully mean to Roper Racing, but to be fair to them, they are not a strong truck team. I mean, if they qualify, when the field has qualifying, which they will for every race this year, if they qualify, it's a good day. And last year, except for this race, which they finished, I think, 3rd in, the only other top 15, top 10s was when they had a Cup guy in the car. And that's what happens when you're a small truck team. I mean, that's the way things are. So why hasn't Ford invested in their pipeline? And, I mean, obviously it's worked out with Penske because Penske's developed his own driver, but at the same time, I see the Fords struggle, and the Fords have 15 Cup cars. I see them struggling to keep 15 cars for a lot longer because they just don't have the drivers coming up. I mean, Kevin Harvick's going to retire. Eric Almirola is already retiring. Joey Logano's still in his prime, but he's getting up there. Brad Keselowski's going to retire within a few years, probably 5-ish years. Michael McDowell can't be at Front Row forever, even though that's a good fit that he's in right now. It's just Ford is, I think, wasting a lot of time not investing in the young core, not investing in the Truck Series. And they're depending on teams like Front Row, who runs their Cup program, to go down and do it. And I think in a few years you're gonna really see Chevy, definitely, because they've got the pipeline. Chevy's gonna continue to dominate the Cup Series. It's gonna be a Chevy series because they just have the pipeline, and so they're gonna churn out drivers, and it's gonna be competitive, and it's gonna be between Chevys. Unfortunately for me, because I'm a Ford fan. But anywho, that wraps up our discussion on the actual racing stories. So if you aren't familiar with my series on the channel, my 2021 Fast Car series, Fast Car uses a custom points system that is inspired by the NASCAR YouTuber Slapshoe's revised point system that he suggested that the Cup Series should change to. I agree. I tweaked it a bit to follow how I wanted to do it. The only difference in my point system for that series to what I'm going to use for this every week is the crown jewel races. I'm not designating them as crown jewels. I'm just doing normal points. So how the points work is it is 200 points for a win, 190 for second place, and then from second place on to 36th, it drops by 5 points each. So 190, 185, 180, 175, and so on and so forth down to 20 points. When you hit 36th and 20 points, any driver that's behind that, so 36th to 40th, earns 20 points. There are bonus points, which you can see here as Austin Cindric has 205 points. If you lead a lap, you get 5 bonus points. If you lead the most laps, you have 10 bonus points. And then if you win the pole, you get 5 points. The fastest lap points are removed, as I don't feel like diving in that deep to find that. So that's just a personal thing. But I will be posting the top 20 in fast car points after every race at the end of this podcast weekly. So just looking at it, it's obviously the finishing results for the most part with the bonus points chucked in. You have a few ties like Truex, since he led the most he led, I think, the most laps. No, I don't think he did. Anywho, it's close. Brad Keselowski led the most points. That's why Keselowski, even though he finished 9th, is ahead of McDowell and Reagan. So Cindric leads by 10 points over Bubba, and there you see that. And then same thing for Xfinity. Austin Hill leads 10 points over Allmendinger. And then for the trucks, Zane Smith is 10 points over Ben Rhodes. So obviously in the Cup Series, in real points, certain drivers are ineligible, as you can't earn points for every race if you don't, or you can't earn points if you've declared points for another series. So, for example, Landon Castle, 15th in my system, didn't earn points yesterday because he runs full-time in Xfinity and is running for the championship there. But in my system, I'm going to be having all drivers that compete or attempt to qualify will be on the chart. At the end of the year, we'll go through and we'll take a look at the full chart. But yeah, so part-timers are included. So obviously in this, the top two are, or the 3 part-timers are Reagan, Hemrick, and Castle in the top 20. So you'll see them fall out, as races go on. Xfinity, the top part-time guy is Josh Bilicki, who finished 9th. And then J.J. Yeley in 13th. And then in trucks, the top part-time guy is 5th and 7th. With Kligerman and Jesse Little. So it'll be interesting. I always find doing a full point season format interesting to see how it reflects on, the course of a season with the modern points, see how much the points earn and whatnot. And then just quick housekeeping for next week. Next week's racing recap will include the points standings for the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, Truck Series, so on and so forth. As since today was the first race, this weekend was the first race, it's kind of obvious who's wearing the points. But after next week, we'll start looking at the points and how they develop, how many playoff points a driver has, who's locked in the playoffs, so on and so forth. And that'll be for every series. The racing recap will be series specific as best as I can do it. NASCAR probably will be on its own because it's at least one. It's typically at the minimum 2, but sometimes 3 races. So I want to do my own episode, for that, and then F1, IndyCar may be combined or separate. They may be shorter. If you've got a preference, let me know down in the chat. But that rounds up today the recap. So. Yeah. As always, if you liked the video, feel free to like, subscribe, and check out the playlists on the channel. You can catch up on any of the previous races, any other series you want to get into. I've got season previews on Formula E, on IMSA, on NASCAR. I've got my fast car content, which is going to be in its own playlist. and I have playlists with each motorsport having its own thing. So if you want to watch only NASCAR stuff, all the podcasts with NASCAR in it will be in its own playlist, and so on and so forth. But I just want to thank you guys for the support that this last week was. It was my best week ever, and I really appreciate everyone coming out to tune in live or tune in afterwards by watching the replays. So, with that being said, everyone, have a great day. Keep on watching your racing and enjoy. I should be back later today for a fast car race. It's race number 6. No, wait. This is where I got to get better. I promise. I'm getting better. It's race number 6 at Circuit of the Americas for the first and the second road course of the year, the debut of COTA on the fast car schedule, and we will get more into that later today. Thank you so much for watching, and cheers!